Because of the winds that come in off the Atlantic, there's a real changeableness to the climate and not always hospitable environment to live in. And the house has a certain kind of sheltering quality in response to that. The house is situated in Cornwall on the North Atlantic coast. The house is actually in the top corner of a field that's dedicated to livestock. So the original brief of the house was to provide a dwelling, a house for the farm manager, and as such it had to be associated with the herd, both from a kind of planning point of view as a kind of agricultural tie, but in terms of how it was used. The client said to me quite early on, you have to be aware that it's not an always friendly climate we have here. The house can't just be some modern glazed house. It somehow needs to be responsive to that particular climate. So the house is L-shaped. You enter on the knuckle of the L shape, and that's where the office is, which looks back towards the cattle. But then the two wings that then come off that L shape, one is a wing for bedrooms and bathrooms. As you step down from the entrance hall into the main space of the house, there's a real sense of generosity and openness that somehow kind of belies that smallness of scale that one felt just a moment before of entering the threshold of the house. And then the rest of the perimeter is formed by two walls that enclose a garden. And this garden's a domestic realm, so it's set apart from the field, from the rural context of an agricultural farm, and it's where the family can live their lives, plant their vegetables, the kids can play and so on. The house can open up to the courtyard and that family can really enjoy this life around a garden in summertime. The courtyard's oriented to the southeast and the southwest, so one wing receives morning light and one wing receives afternoon light. As one moves around the courtyard and around the wings of the house, looking in on the internal garden, there's an awareness of how the light in the house changes over the course of a day, a real sense of the play of light and shade on the walls of the rooms, on the floor. I first met Andy Toohey as a junior engineer. The two of us worked on a project together before I set up my own practice, and we've been working with each other ever since.
I suppose simplistically, a structural engineer is designing the bones and the architect perhaps is designing the skin. But I think it becomes much more nuanced in a relationship like mine and Hugh's. It's quite a simple palette of materials, isn't it? And
yep.
I think that simplicity runs through everything. The walls are quite thick porotherm blocks.
They're hollow clay, which gives it an insulating property, and we've just applied a lime render on the outside of that and a lime plaster on the inside, which provides this kind of monolithic walls. It's all unpainted on the outside and inside, and on the outside we've really enjoyed the rough texture. It equates to a historical arts and crafts kind of roughcast type texture, so it's very thickly textured lime render, and then when we get to the reveals it turns to a smooth texture, and then that means that we can meet the timber window frames in a really clean way. And you sometimes see in the house that kind of depth of the wall and the simplicity. It means that we've been able to do things like chamfer some of the window reveals where they just cut the block at an angle, and then when they did the lime plastering they just kind of followed it round, and so you get these kind of features which are not dissimilar to those old farmhouses in the West Country.
From a structural point of view, there's a very simple concrete strip foundation and a thin concrete ground bearing slab.
And then we've got these nice terracotta tiles which actually run through the whole house. The roof from the outside is clad with a profile galvanized steel, and then we've got some square section gutters, and there's a real modesty to the house. It's not an expensive house, and so there's this opportunity to use a cheaper material when we can. There's a pleasure in using the same material that's on the barn adjacent to it and kind of making material connections with your neighbour.
I think with the roof and the timber work, it was a kind of happy coincidence, wasn't it, that we knew a really good carpentry firm that's from Devon. And what we ended up with here is UK-grown green Douglas Fir timber. So it couldn't be more sustainable. Feels like the absolute best kind of timber to be making a building like this out of.
The roof is such a defining feature of the house, and you see it in all the rooms. And I think that sense of seeing it in all the rooms ties the house in a bit. So I think there's something about the character of the architecture of this project that has a certain directness, a certain matter-of-factness to it. It's got a certain simplicity to it, I think, that maybe has a connection with the work that we as a practice do more generally, but certainly is very much about this kind of particular site and brief of this simple house in a farm setting in the countryside.